And we're back. You're listening to the Red Book Show on Wexford New People's Movement Radio. Our producer Tony has been inundated with text messages from people entering our draw for our James Joyce book bundle, hasn't he, Steve?
Oh yeah, they've been
They're
coming
flying
in like crazy. Yeah.
Pepe from San Polo says he never read Ulysses but loves Dubliners. Morris says Joyce was nothing but a filthy degenerate. And Sally Ann says she listened to the 1982 RTE radio version, which is very good, Sally Ann. So if you want to enter our draw, WhatsApp Tony now on 089 417 9972. 089 417 9972. Don't be left out. Don't let these books go somewhere else. Now, oh, there's somebody ringing you. Don't ring, Tony. Send in a message. It's okay. Now, our roving reporter, Jamie T. Murphy, has been out in the field. I think you have it there, Tony, first, do you?
Yeah.
He sent us in a fax. He wasn't able to get signal. He's up in the courthouse again today. Now, so I'm just going to read this out. Hi, Wally. I'm here in the district court where Rashers Hanley is up on charges of being a two-faced rat whose ma have worms. At least that's according to the accuser, Dots Byrne. Dots was said to have been once close with Mr. Hanley, but they fell out over refusal to share a bag of yolks up the rocks. When approached by the judge, Mr. Hanley simply said, "How are you, Judge? How's your ma? Is your da working?" The judge reminded Mr. Hanley he was in court and not in Hefos. He imposed a suspended sentence on Mr. Hanley. News at 11. Thank you, Jamie. And as we always say, our thoughts and prayers are with that brave little reporter, Jamie T. Murphy. Now, so, Steve, we were talking about Ulysses, and in keeping this to a Bloomsday theme, we said we'd have a little bit of a discussion about Shakespeare and Company.
Yeah.
Have you been to Shakespeare and Company?
No, I've never been there. I went to Paris like a long, long time ago, almost 40 years ago, and didn't get over there.
Yeah. Well, the original is long gone now anyway. There is, the current one is run by Sylvia, who's actually named Walt Whitman, or, what am I saying, George Whitman's daughter, but she's named after Sylvia Beach. So Shakespeare and Company was an English language bookstore in Paris, founded in 1919 by American Sylvia Beach. During the 1920s and 30s, the store was the home of many expat writers like F. Scott Fitzgerald, Ernest Hemingway, Man Ray, Ezra Pound, Henry Miller, and many more. Now, James Joyce moved to Paris in 1920 and quickly turned the shop into his personal office. He called it Stratford on Odeon. He wrote that Shakespeare and Company was a meeting place, a clubhouse, a post office, money exchange, and reading room for the famous and soon to be famous of the avant-garde. There was also a moneylenders for Joyce, as Sylvia gave him money and mothered him all the time. Because, as we've mentioned, Joyce was a bit of a bum, listeners. Now, Joyce got into a lot of trouble in 1921. Some of Ulysses was published in the Little Review in America. So they published a few paragraphs, and there was an obscenity trial which convicted the editors. And after that, it looked like Ulysses was untouchable. Certainly no UK or American publishers were going to go near it.
Yeah, untouchable in a bad way.
Yeah. And Joyce was pretty depressed over the whole thing. So on the 2nd of February 1922, Joyce's 40th birthday, Shakespeare and Company published Ulysses. An incredible, incredible risk to take. She had very little money, and this could ruin her. But she published 1,000 numbered copies. The ones that survived are now worth a lot of money. Many of them were destroyed, however. And it's insane, really, when you think about it, that Sylvia Beach was prepared to put her savings into publishing this book, but she saw something in this.
She took a chance. She was right on the mark.
Now, at this time, she also set up what became known as the Paris Pipeline, where people, mainly tourists, but also Ernest Hemingway, would buy books off her and copies of Ulysses and smuggle them into the UK and the US. Uh, it's just crazy when you think about it.
Yeah, different times.
Throughout her life, Sylvia was constantly giving James Joyce loans and advances. In 1933, the US court decided to legalize Ulysses, which suddenly meant that big publishing houses could come in and bid on it.
Yeah,
And of course, Joyce done what Joyce would always do. He betrayed Sylvia straight away and signed a highly lucrative deal with Random House. Sylvia was eliminated from having any rights to the book.
oh, that's awful.
She never even got her original deposit back.
That's
But
really
of course,
awful.
she loved him because she called him
Yeah.
her James Joyce and she
Yeah.
forgave him. And very interestingly, Steve, do you know what happened to that version of Shakespeare and Company?
I think I know what happened to it, but you can probably tell the story in more detail than me.
Sylvia stayed in Paris after
After the Nazis came in.
after the Nazis' occupation, and she even had a girl working with her who was Jewish, and she protected as much as she could. One day, an SS officer came into the shop, and he saw a first edition copy of Finnegan's Wake in the window, and he said, "I want that book." And Sylvia told him where to go, said, "Under no circumstances is a Nazi buying my James Joyce's book." So he said he'd be back. In a couple of hours, they completely dismantled the shop, and every trace of Shakespeare and Company disappeared. Sylvia did spend time in prison, however, for her anti-Nazi views. Very, very brave.
Very brave.
Yeah, so I think it goes to show, that people, when they met Joyce, people would often take to him and be prepared to make huge sacrifices for him, and he didn't often pay them back.
Yeah, but I guess somehow they felt rewarded at some spiritual level or something.
Yeah.
Makes sense in a weird way.
Yeah. Well, you're listening to the Red Book Show on Wexford New People's Movement Radio, and we have another text just in there from Jackie. Tried to read Ulysses, but gave up after a while. So listened to the audiobook, and it was brilliant. Well, that's great, Jackie. Whatever. There are some brilliant audiobook versions out there. That 1982 version that Sally Ann was talking about is fantastic. We have another message in from Pat. I imagined Hans Christian Andersen and Joyce discussing the Emperor's New Clothes, and Joyce saying to Andersen, "Hold my coat." We have a message from Liam Mullen. Was in Stratford upon Avon 2 years ago. Fantastic place, even if my English cousin slagged me off for dozing off on the top of hop-off bus. The heat and my meds, I reckon. Thanks for that, Liam. So, Steve, I think it's time for Dr. Huennekes' Almanac.
All right. This will be an expanded version of Dr. Huennekes' Almanac. I wanted to tell listeners who are going to be disappointed that there's no crack karaoke.
Oh, no.
No.
Well, just on that, Steve, I want to tell the listeners that you were performing live last Sunday in Eclectic Avenue.
Yeah, I sang some songs.
You sang a lot of songs.
I sang
very,
Wild Horses,
very good.
Bob Dylan's cover version.
Yeah,
I sang some more in Zevon. I even tried Cat Stevens. I don't know how well I did.
you done great. You done, and we even done a duet, didn't we? You're giving me singing lessons now.
Oh, no. Anyway,
Well, we're thinking. I know Steve is shy about this and doesn't want to announce it, but we're thinking of bringing out a Christmas album. Myself and Steve. We have a couple of other people lined up too. Maybe Anthony Bates. Tony might go on the drums. So if you're interested in hearing a Christmas album from myself and Steve, text in now.
thanks, Wally. I didn't know anything about that. Okay, this is the edition of Dr. Huennekes' Almanac. This is a story of young men and older men, of Ulysses and forgiveness, of poetry and mortality. It starts with James Joyce, who died in 1941. An American poet, Delmore Schwartz, who died in 1966, was a rising star. Upon hearing the news of Joyce's death, he wrote a tribute to Joyce called King of Kings. I'm going to read this, but I want to caution you that as great a poet as Delmore Schwartz was, he seemed to have missed the memo that Joyce was Irish. I'm going to read this poem in its fullness. A king of kings, a king among kings, and he wrote this in 1941. Come, let us rejoice in James Joyce, in the greatness of this poet, king and king of poets. For he is our poor dead king. He is the monarch and the Caesar of English. He is the veritable king of the king's English, the English of the life of the city, and the English of music. Let them rejoice because he rejoiced and was joyous, for his joy was superior, it was supreme, for it was accomplished. After the suffering of much evil, the evil of the torment of pride, by overcoming of disgust and despair, by means of the confrontation of them, by enduring of nausea, the supporting of exile, the drawing from the silence of exile, the pure arias of the hidden music of all things, all beings. For the joy of Joyce was earned by the sweat of the bow of his mind, by the tears of the agony of his heart. Hence it was gained, mastered, and conquered. Hence it was not a gift and freely given, a mercy often granted to masters, as if they were miraculous, were natural. For he earned his joy and ours by the domination of evil, by the confrontation and the exorcism of language, in all of its powers of imitation and imagination, radiance, and delight. Well, Delmore Schwartz obviously admired James Joyce. And I'll talk a little bit now about Schwartz. His star kept rising. He was the editor of the Partisan Review. He won the Bollinger Prize. He was a professor at Syracuse University. It kept rising until it suddenly fell. In 1965, he was living destitute in the Chelsea Hotel in seclusion, suffering from both alcoholism and mental illness. It seemed his star did not rise fast enough for him. As his star was starting to fall, he became advisor for a young man named Lou Reed, who died in 2013. Reed was a student at Syracuse University, and he was a big admirer of Schwartz and Joyce. And he actually was with a group of students, and Schwartz was the leader of this group of students. It kind of reminded me of Mr. Keating and Dead Poets Society. And they had a great time together, going to pubs and bars and talking about poetry. And Reed said at one point that what Schwartz taught him about poetry was to use simple words, and you could get a lot out of simple words. Anyway, they had a falling out because Reed himself was suffering from all of his problems and he was dying. And I guess, Lou Reed really needed him because he was like a father figure. So he sort of cursed him for not talking to him anymore. And Schwartz said, I don't want to talk to you anymore at any time. And Reed ended up writing a song called European Sun. It was a tribute to Schwartz, but it was almost like an act of anger. Thing is we do things and later we really regret them, and then the sins lie unatoned because the person we want to apologize to has died. So he matured and he regretted what he had done. And this is a story of young men and older men, Ulysses and forgiveness, poetry and mortality. So Reed ended up writing a song called My House in 1982. I'm going to half sing this song. The image of the poets in the breeze. Canadian geese are flying above the trees. A mist is hanging gently on the lake. My house is very beautiful at night. My friend and teacher occupies a spare room. He's dead, at peace at last, the wandering Jew. Other friends had put stones on his grave. He was the first great man I had ever met. Sylvia and I got out our Ouija board. To dial the spirit across the room it soared. We were happy and amazed at what we saw. Blazing stood the proud and regal name Delmore. Delmore, I missed all your funny ways. I missed your jokes and the brilliant things you said. My Daedalus to your Bloom was such a perfect wit, and to find you in my house makes things perfect. I really got a lucky life, my writing, my motorcycle, and my wife, and to top it all off, a spirit of pure poetry living in this stone and wood house with me. The image of the poets in the breeze. Canadian geese are flying above the trees. A mist is hanging gently on the lake. Our house is very beautiful at night. 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 So this was a story about young men and older men, Ulysses and forgiveness, poetry and mortality. And as we usually do, I'm going to conclude Dr. Huennekes' Almanac with a couple of haikus. These are from Farewell to America. How I know no bitterness. Forgiveness, that's how. I stayed friends with my whole past. I stopped my running. Now, there's a story behind the last haiku I will read tonight. And I was looking for something to hold on to. My father had just died. He died in 1977 in December, a week before Christmas. And I was angry. I was holding on to my anger. But then I found my dad had written this on his neat commercial artist handwriting, his script. I found it with a couple of notes he had, and this was written on a used piece of toilet paper. He wrote this: there may be a sign at the gate of heaven reading as follows: leave all of your accomplishments and worldly possessions outside. Just bring in an honest face. And I'm still holding on to that to this day. So I'll read one more haiku. This one is dedicated to my dad, Francis Joseph Huennekes. We'll see each other in paradise. Imagine a rule in heaven just mandating, bring in your real face. So that's all for Dr. Huennekes' Almanac.
That's beautiful, Steve. Thanks for that. You're always so thoughtful and real. Kind of makes me feel even worse that I'm going to bring up the next subject now, but we can't let Bloomsday pass, Steve, without talking about the more erotic side of James Joyce writing. Let me read you a little quote from one of Joyce's letters to Nora during their courting phase. So, Steve, now this isn't addressed to you or to the listeners. I send you a little banknote and hope you may be able to buy a pretty, frilly pair of drawers, at least for yourself out of it, and will send you more when I am paid again. Now, in 2004, an erotic letter from Joyce to Nora sold at Sotheby's. Do you know how much it sold for, Steve?
I have no idea.
£240,000.
Oh my gosh.
So if you are in possession of any filthy little letters out there from James Joyce, send them this way. But we will be touching on the subject of Joyce's love and lust later, Nora Barnacle, but we haven't actually talked about Bloomsday at all. Why it's called Bloomsday, how we came about to have this tradition. Steve, when did you first become aware of a Bloomsday tradition?
I actually became aware of Bloomsday tradition here when
Really?
Red Books had a Bloomsday outspoken.
So you hadn't come across it in America?
No. I had never seen or heard of it.
It is international now, though, and it is celebrated usually around Irish communities, but I think it's gone beyond that even at this stage. And it is celebrated in America in places as well. But the first famous Bloomsday took place on the 16th of June 1954, 50 years on from the events of the novel. And the person we have to thank most for it is John Ryan, who was publican, and he's owner of the Bailey pub in Dublin at the time. You might see a lot of people in the kind of Joycean cosplay wearing references to the Bailey on their hats. He was also editor of the Envoy, a literary magazine, and he organised that very first event. He was joined by legendary Irish writers Flann O'Brien, Anthony Cronin and Patrick Kavanagh, as well as Tom Joyce, who was a cousin of James's. And the idea was very simple. They were going to meet. John Ryan hired out 2 horse-drawn carriages, and they were going to follow the novel and recreate Leopold Bloom's journey across Dublin.
It sounds like what you call a simple plan.
A simple plan, which didn't go exactly the way they expected.
Yeah.
They began at the Martello Tower, which by that stage had become the James Joyce Centre. They were going to take in Davy Burns, and they were going to end up in Nighttown, which was the old red light district referenced in Ulysses. But they got very, very, very drunk. I think Flann O'Brien and Kavanagh were probably drunk in the morning. Flann O'Brien tried to climb the Martello Tower from the outside. Made it about 6 foot up before falling on his face. And they got into a lot of arguments by the time they reached Davy Burns, and they all went on their separate ways, and there was a lot of vomiting and fist fights.
And they had no idea they were making history.
They had no idea that they had actually created an international literary holiday.
Yeah.
In 1949, Ryan had founded Envoy, a literary journal which published Patrick Kavanagh, J.P. Dunleavy, Samuel Beckett, and others. And the reason he managed to publish all of those were that they hung out drinking in his pub, which is an incredible and a very Irish story. But people like to look back on that time now as a kind of bohemian Dublin, which they call it Bagatonia, Graftonia, things like that.
Yeah.
Which is insane when you consider what Dublin was like in the 1950s. It was a very, very conservative place.
Yeah.
Archbishop McQuaid was very much in charge.
I saw this in Texas, Wally, just to interject something, is that Texas is a very conservative state in the 1980s especially, but there was a wonderfully vibrant subculture right there in North Texas. And so I've seen this before. It happens every time, I'd say.
Yeah. Well, that is interesting. So we're going to have a song now. When we come back from the break, Steve, we're going to be joined in studio by local poet and playwright Mary Beery. We'll be talking to Mary about her upcoming play in the Arts Centre, about the creation of her poetry and many, many other things.
Looking forward to that.
Before that, a word of wisdom from James Joyce for you. Beware the horns of a bull, the heels of the horse, and the smile of an Englishman.